Today we're going to be discussing homeostasis and feedback systems in the human body. So below I drew for you a thermostat. This device looks really simple. You all have it in your households. It generally keeps you from being too cold when it's cold outside or being too hot when it's nice and warm out. It's a way to balance the internal temperatures. This is a good example for homeostasis, especially in your body. And homeostasis is like a condition where the system maintains more or less a steady state. It's where your cells, tissues, organ systems throughout your body, they work with different variables and they narrow their ranges when it fluctuates, keeping you at a stable internal environment. So let's dive into this a little more. So in homeostasis, generally there's this term called set point. Or normal range. It's where your body likes to be, and it works really hard to try and maintain that. In order to maintain itself, it uses the stimulus, sensors, controls, and effectors. It all starts with a stimulus. Like before, it could be the raging heat of summer, or even it being too cold outside and snowing, and your body starts to shiver. Generally, the stimulus indicates the value of the variable, and it has moved away from the set point and left you out of a normal range. This then kicks in your sensor, which monitors the value of this variable, and it tries to tell your body or send a signal to the control center. Once it reaches the control center then matches the data with normal values in your body. If this value is not at the set point or is outside the normal range, the control center then will in turn send a signal to the effector. The effector is an organ, a gland, muscle, or some other structure in your body that acts as a signal from the control center to move the variable back to the set point. Your body regulates with homeostasis in two ways. It can either be a positive feedback or a negative feedback. So let's look at a negative feedback loop. Put this up here to show that it's negative. Say your body temperature likes to stay around at 97.95 to 99.5 degrees Fahrenheit. But in this case, let's say your body temperature rises and you become too hot and your body begins to sweat. Maybe it's because of the blazing sun outside. Now, the human's body temperature regulatory center is in the hypothalamus of the brain, where it receives data from the sensors in the skin. In this case, nerve cells in the skin end up triggering the regulatory side center in the brain. In turn, the brain then decides to activate sweat glands throughout the body. In this scenario, excessive body temperature was the stimulus, which in turn triggered the nerve cells. That triggered the brain. That told your body to sweat. Your brain being the control, sweat being the effector. That brings your body back to a normal set point. This is an example of a negative feedback loop. Feedback serves to reduce an excessive response, like becoming too hot, and it keeps the variable within a normal range. In order for the body to return back to its normal temperature, it told itself to sweat, and this sweating then leads to evaporation off the edge of the skin. When the sweat evaporates from the skin surface into the surrounding air, it takes the body heat with it. It works the same when your body is trying to heat up. So say it's cold outside, and your body receives data that the body temperature is lower than the set point. It then has this following response. Blood vessels within your skin, they begin to constrict, and it prevents blood from flowing close to the skin surface. This reduces heat loss from the surface. And as the temperature falls lower, random signals to the skeletal muscles are triggered, which causes you to shiver. The shivering builds up a small amount of heat for your body. Then the thyroid gland might be stimulated by your brain, which is realizing that it's cold. This thyroid then secretes adrenaline, a hormone that causes the breakdown of glycogen. Glycogen being the carbohydrates used for energy storage in animals. This then becomes the new energy source for the body, producing more heat, which brings your body back to its normal temperature range. Another example is blood glucose. If the blood glucose levels rises above a normal range, your pancreatic beta cells release a hormone, insulin, into the bloodstream. Insulin signals cells to take up excess glucose from the blood until the level of blood glucose decreases to the normal range. Now, if blood glucose levels fall below the normal range, pancreatic alpha cells release a hormone called glucagon into the bloodstream. Glucagon signals cells to break down stored glycogen to glucose and release that glucose into the blood until the level of blood glucose increases back to the normal range. Positive feedback loops work a little different. Feedback serves to intensify a response until an endpoint is reached. Examples of this process control in the human body include blood clotting and childbirth. The process normally begins when the head of an infant pushes against the cervix. This stimulates nerve impulses in the human body, which travel from the cervix to the hypothalamus in the brain. In response, the hypothalamus sends a hormone, oxytocin, to the pituitary gland, which in turn secretes into the bloodstream so it can be carried back to the cervix. Once back to the cervix starts to dilate in preparation for the birth, and stronger contractions occur. At this point, the cervix is no longer stimulated to send nerve responses to the brain, and the entire process stops once the baby is born. Homeostasis mechanisms work continuously to maintain stable conditions in your body. But, however, sometimes these mechanisms fail. And when they do, it's called